Well, hello. Hey guys, welcome back. It is live at 5. Jeb Smith, real estate expert. Look at that. Josh Lewis, our mortgage professional expert. Also here, we're here to answer your real estate mortgage related questions. So if you're joining us for the first time, we appreciate you being here. Just put your question in the comment box below. We will get to it. And comments. If you hate us, like us, whatever, put that in there as well. Let us know where you're watching from. Josh looks confused. He looks like he's not sure what's going on over there at the moment. So we're gonna let him get back to he's using chords. I'm not sure what's going on, but so not really a lot has changed over the last week other than interest rates. And once Josh gets his stuff together, we're gonna address those. But again, let me know where you're watching from. Let us know your real estate questions and we will get to them. I know we got a couple of regular normal viewers, normal. Josh, you're still not here, my friend. Viewers in the chat. So we're going to get to some questions here momentarily. Josh, just use the Apple Pod headphones. All right, guys, instead of just dragging you down this loop where Josh has no idea what's going on, no sound, buddy. We are just going to continue to move along here and answer some questions. He's just going to be there like a mannequin. So Darlene had actually chimed in early this morning, says her house has been going up almost daily. Dad's house has been going up almost daily. My phone's house, her phone has a house. That's incredible. Has been going up daily as well. It's insane. So yeah, a lot of home prices are continuing to increase. There's a couple of things out there in the market at the moment that I think are going to continue to push house prices higher. One of those we'll talk about when Josh finally figures out what's going on his side, and we update you guys. So. And Richard is asking, is it even possible to purchase a home at appraised value anymore, or are those days long gone? So no, absolutely. I'm seeing more and more of that actually in this market. The craziness that we saw 6 months ago is still out there in some parts of Southern California, but I think as a whole, it's calmed down a little bit. You're not seeing people go way, way, way above the asking price in most cases. Things are selling closer to that number. You've got less offers. So typical of a more normal market, but at the moment, I'm seeing inventory decrease. A lot of you guys that watch us weekly, I always update you on Orange County and my local market just to give you an idea of what's happening here. And we're at the lowest level of inventory I've seen in, 4 or 5 months at this point. I think just in Orange County, as a whole, just over 2,000 active homes on the market, 2,050, I believe. A couple of weeks ago, we were at 2,600. So we're down almost 25% in just a couple of weeks with regards to the available number of homes. Now, that's single families, townhomes, condos. You guys hear me talking about that. Here in Huntington Beach, as of today, we were at 137. A couple of weeks ago, we were at 170. So, we've dropped another 20% or so there with regards to the number of active properties. So, real estate is local for sure. So you might be in a market where inventory is increasing. You're seeing less demand, and that could be the case here in Southern California. Not so much, right? Most buyers have very slim pickings when it comes to property out there. In fact, I got a lot of buyers looking that, aren't seeing anything. And in fact, I got a couple offers out at the moment right now that they're going to end up selling above the asking price on both of the offers I have out at the moment. Whether or not we get them, I don't know. So it's one of those, it's crazy. It's hard to predict what's going to happen, but I think you're going to continue to see similar market for the next couple of months because I don't think inventory is really going to change. But we're going to continue to move along here as we wait for Josh. But to answer the question, Richard, to get back to it, I think you're getting closer to a more normal market where you're actually able to find, and get property closer to the appraised value. But obviously, it's going to be depending on your market. Michael Duree, if I buy a home this year, how much time will have to pass before I'm considered a first-time home buyer again? Will there ever be a time when your cell phone bills and lost the rest of that? But how much time has to pass before you're considered a first-time home buyer? 3 years, I believe, is what it is. So 3 years has to pass before you're considered a first-time home buyer in most markets. there's very few incentives out there actually for first-time home buyers. People believe that, you're labeled a first-time home buyer and you get all these perks. Yeah, in some states there are first-time home buyer programs, assistance, that sort of thing. Here in California, there's really nothing. You're a first-time home buyer, you're not. There's not really much change in that. We're seeing Josh come up. Oh boy.
I just wanted to give you a test. I wanted to see if you were ready to roll on your own.
Yeah, I was a little scared, but we were able to manage. So, Michael's got a question here. I answered it as 3 years. Avoid the second part of the question, but how much time has to pass before you're considered a first time home buyer with regards to loans? And is there really any incentive to be a first time home buyer in California? I know in other states there are some programs, et cetera.
Yeah, not really. Some programs do have a first-time home buyer requirement. The Fannie and Freddie have first-time buyer program that is limited to first-time buyers, but there's not a huge benefit to it other than allowing the 3% down. So for the most part, no. And the requirement is any program that does require it is going to want to see the last 3 years of tax returns to confirm that you have not taken the mortgage interest deduction on your tax return.
Got it. And even with that said, now, I did a video where I did the conventional at 3% down versus an FHA at 3.5% down. And really, regardless of where your credit scores were or what have you, the lower monthly payment ended up being FHA for the most part, just because of how high the mortgage insurance was on that 3% down with conventional. So, even if you're considering, you're considered a first time buyer and you can do that 3% down conventional, you might, compare your options out there and just make sure that that's the best program for you. So.
Absolutely. Just as an example, we have some viewers here of the show. Yeda Bernal and her husband, they bought out in Riverside earlier in the year, and excellent credit. They were going 3% down. So husband and wife, really high credit scores, and it worked out. I think we were about $20, $30 lower on the conventional loan, but it does take generally that combination of really high credit scores and two borrowers to get the mortgage insurance down low enough on a conventional loan to offset the higher interest rate that you'll pay versus FHA.
Got it. Augustine is asking, wants to start real estate investing, but I think the housing market is so expensive, I assume. Can you tell me how to go about it? So Josh, if you're looking to get an investment, start buying property, we've talked about this. We talked about cash flow, we talk about appreciation. What's your go-to on addressing that question? If somebody says, hey, I want to start buying investment property, what's the advice?
A first-time investment. So generally, I advise don't go outside of your home market as a first-time investor, just because you want to be close to the property. You want to be able to drive by. You want to keep an eye on it. Now, let's say you happen to live in LA County or Orange County, and entry-level homes are north of $500,000. And the rents, although the rents are really high, they are low relative to that high purchase price. Makes it very difficult unless you have a large down payment. So, you and I have looked at some other stuff. We've talked about a few other things. We mentioned last week that if any of you have homes in Bakersfield that you would like to sell, Jeb and I want to invest. So that market, you can get an entry level 3-bedroom home for $225, $250 in that price range. And with those, the rents will come close to cash flowing for you. Now, as Jeb already said, what's the difference with buying that home versus a home in LA or Orange County? It's probably over the long run not going to appreciate as high of a rate. And probably a more extreme example, you guys know that I bought a home 3-4 months ago in Orange. We're almost finished with the rehab on that, and we're looking at an option of a property where my wife's from Washington. We looked at that, and up there we can get a 4-bedroom, 2,900 square foot fixer upper with a finished basement in the low 4s, and the rents make a lot more sense relative to that purchase price. So barring someone having a really large down payment in the high cost areas, it's going to be difficult to buy your first home unless you're able to do some legwork and marketing and really find a distressed property that's off market. I mean, Jeb, you can vouch for this. If something hits the MLS, it is not going to sell at a discount. It just the amount of marketing. Like I can say, if we go back in time in 2008, 2009, 2010, when I was flipping a lot of homes, we were buying the majority of them directly out of the MLS. And the reality was, despite the fact that they were getting put in the multiple listing service and advertised and made available to all buyers, there was so little demand for homes that we could still get discounts. Now, once it hits that format, where not only do realtors see it in the MLS, for the most part, it's going to be shown on Zillow and Redfin, and anyone else thinking of investing is going to see it. So, like, to the contrary, at that time, if you had $80,000 of repairs, you'd probably get a $200,000 discount on the property. Now, if you have $80,000 of repairs, you're probably getting a $40,000 discount on the property. So you're better off buying something that is already rehabbed if you're talking about buying out of the MLS. So the alternative is doing your own legwork, doing your own marketing, and finding people who have not yet hit the market, who have a distressed situation, which we've gone through this before. Distressed right now doesn't really mean foreclosure or short sale, because most people are sitting on equity and have the ability to do a market sale. And someone who has some other type of distress. They inherited a property and they're out of the area and they don't want to deal with it.
Right.
They have, a sibling that wants to be bought out of a property and they just want to be done with it because it's been such a headache. So really, your options are to look at other markets outside of the high cost areas where the cash flow makes a little bit more sense, or really dive into your local real estate investment clubs and educate yourself and learn on how to find off-market deals. But again, you're paying in sweat equity, not in terms of a hammer and nail or doing demolition, but in learning and educating yourself and marketing to find distressed sellers that are willing to sell a home at a discount.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I nailed it. So yeah, I'm not going to jump on or piggyback on that. I mean, I think it was well explained. So, yeah, in this market, it's difficult, right? Unless, like Josh said, you have the money for the down payment, you need to find something offline. He did mention, anything that hits the MLS is going to have offers, especially a distressed property. Anything that's listed below market value hits the MLS, it's over. It's going to sell for market value at that. And so that's the tough part. You got to do the legwork, like Josh mentioned. Jennifer is here. She is going to be moderating the chat. So if you guys don't behave, she doesn't like you, she might just kick you out. So thank you, Jennifer, for being here. We appreciate you. Your boy Joey Crack is back. Look at that. And Joey Crack is back. We could
The question, Jeb, was he gone because he found a home and was so busy doing his inspections and contingencies, or is he still just thinking about it?
Nope, he's thinking about it, and he's got a question here. He's asking, what can you apply your earnest money to? Is it only for the seller, or can it be used against closing costs? So when you purchase a home, you essentially have to show the seller that you're serious, and you put an earnest money deposit, an escrow deposit, into a third party, an escrow company, an attorney, or what have you, to hold that money as you go through the process. Now, that money is typically refundable if you back out of the contract and you still have contingencies in place. But Josh, if I have an earnest money deposit, does that money come out of my closing costs? Do I need it in addition to my down payment? How does it work?
So for any of you who are fortunate enough to be familiar with dual entry bookkeeping, you took accounting 101 in high school or junior college, it really is that simple. That amount goes into the escrow company, but it is a credit on your side of the closing statement. So it doesn't necessarily go to anything specifically, but if you're buying a $300,000 home with a 5% down, that's $10,000. If you made a $5,000 deposit, it's going to offset that. So say you have $10,000 down payment, you have $10,000 in closing costs and prepaids, you're going to bring in $15,000 at close after your $5,000 deposit. So just think of it as a general all-purpose credit to you at closing for the total that you owe between down payment, closing costs, and prepaid taxes and insurance.
Awesome. Al Bundy has a question here. Can buyers get owner-occupied conventional financing when putting an LLC on title? Does that equate to higher rates? So if I want to put my property in an LLC versus holding it as an individual or as a trust or what have you, can I do it as an owner-occupied? How's it work? All that good stuff.
So Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA, your traditional loans will not allow entity vesting. They will only loan to people or trusts. So from that perspective, you can do it, but you are going to pay a higher interest rate. I actually have a personal example of this. We own a place out in Rancho Mirage with my in-laws, and it was going to be used as a vacation rental. So for that purpose, they were not comfortable owning it as individuals and were comfortable paying the premium in terms of an interest rate at that time. So we did it with a 15-year mortgage. At that time, a 15-year was maybe about 3.75%, and we ended up paying about 4.5% to go with a bank that would lend, a local bank that would lend to an LLC. The other thing you may look at, people will say, well, just close as an individual, take title of husband and wife, joint tenants, whatever, then set up your LLC and deed it to an LLC. Well, if you own the home as individuals and you and your spouse deed it to yourselves in your trust, that's already been litigated, and that is not considered a sale because the beneficial interest of that trust is still occurring to you and your spouse. If you do that and you transfer it to an LLC, the LLC is a business. It is a separate entity from you, even though you may control that, and it is technically a sale. So what that means is your lender can call your loan due as a due on sale if you try and circumvent that. So we have people asking all the time. And if you go, we just mentioned in one of the last questions, go to your local real estate investment club, go to Bigger Pockets, go to some of the online forums and educate yourself on some of this. And there are people that will tell you, just do whatever you want, take it as an individual, then move the loan or move the title over into the entity, the LLC or the corporation. It is technically a sale, and the due on sale clause in your mortgage can be triggered. Just like you can't sell me your property without that loan being due, you can't transfer it to an LLC or a partnership or a corporation without the lender also having the ability to call that loan due. It doesn't mean that they will, but they absolutely have the right. And I would hate to rely on them not doing that just because they don't do it in the first year or two or three. You get into a bad market, bank wants to get their money, they can call the loan due.
Now, what happens with property taxes, right? So when you transfer property taxes, a grant deed, to an individual in that case, right? Just a transfer of title from, I add you, for example, and now you and I own the house together. Typically, there's no trigger to the local assessor because it's just a transfer, and now we're joint tenants on the property. Now, what happens when you transfer it to an LLC and it's technically a sale? Does the assessor look at that and say, we're reassessing your property taxes now because a sale has taken place?
So we had to go through this with a client. And again, let's back up and say for those of you in the 49 states that are not California, this means nothing to you because your property gets reassessed every year. In California, due to Prop 13, your taxes can only go up 2% annually. So if you've owned a home for any period of time, you're going to be assessed for far less than the market value. What Jeb is asking is, does that trigger the ability for the government to reassess your home? In some instances it does, in some that it doesn't. So generally, if we can show that the underlying interest, so let's say Jeb owns the home himself and he wants to put it into Smithco's name and Jeb is the 100% owner of Smithco. As long as you can show that to the assessor's office, you should not be reassessed because the ownership really accrues to the same person. Lenders don't look at it the same way, but the assessor will look at it that way. I have a good client, my money manager. He owned his property and he had deeded it into an LLC, never had it called due on sale, but when we wanted to refinance, we had to take it back out, and to make sure that he didn't get reassessed, we had to document and show the county assessor's office that the underlying ownership interests were the same.
Got it. Good stuff. Good stuff. Joey is back, gave us a $10 super chat. So thank you, Joey. And he says he's actively looking. The market here in Westchester, New York is tight, and everything here is either overpriced, in his opinion, or absolutely trash, borderline condemned. Laugh out loud. Salute. Missed you guys. So, yep, hey, dude, welcome back. We appreciate you being here. So, yeah, I'm hearing that in a lot of markets, right? I mean, I'm seeing it here in our local market. As I started the show, I updated you a little bit on what's happening here. Our inventory is down about 25% in the last 2 months. And a lot of what you see out there is garbage from my clients. That's what they're telling me, right? So I've got clients willing to look in 5 or 6 cities here in Orange County, and we're not talking small cities. These are large cities, and where normally you would have a lot of options. And these buyers, I mean, one of them's up to $1 million, and I think she had like 40 properties to choose from in her price point. and she's pretty open about what she's willing to buy, and most of it's garbage. It's either garbage or overpriced. So yeah, we feel you, man. We definitely do. And I don't think it's going to get any better. I think you're going to see buyers get more buying power here in the next 2 months or so. I think you're going to have less inventory on the market. Buyers with more buying power, less properties to choose from, means that you're going to have, maybe not the craziness we saw 6 months ago, but it means it's not going to go away, at least in my opinion. Josh, thoughts on that?
I'm more than happy to continue the Joey segment of the show, and what I would want to say is the first thing I want to lead with, and this isn't to say that you're wrong, because you probably are right, but I know you started looking before the pandemic, put everything on hold during the pandemic, and have been looking again this year. You thought the same thoughts in January that you're thinking now, but if you had bought one of those overpriced homes in January, you would be thrilled at what a discount or how much equity you've built up based off of what homes are selling for. So just a couple of things that sort of, they're not the specific questions that you're asking, but what I would advise in this situation is people are looking at the prices being so much higher than they've been before and concluding that the homes are overpriced. We talk about this every week ad nauseum. You guys are probably tired of hearing it.
I am.
Prices are not too high when they are a function of supply and demand. We have a limited supply and no major increase in supply coming at any point on the near-term horizon. We have a large amount of demand, able demand, people that can and do qualify for homes and are willing to buy them, and that grows by the month as more people age into the appropriate life stage where spouse, children, all that stuff says, hey, I need a home. Renting isn't for me anymore. The supply demand imbalance is not going to change anytime soon. So what would it take to make prices look more like what your mind is telling you it should look like? Really, we've gone through this. The only thing that would cause that, and let's jump to Joey had asked another question, so it's the Joey segment of the show, and rates are scary. Westchester, New York, the rates are going to be the same everywhere, but Joey's in Westchester, New York. Rates are not scary. Rates are up a tiny little bit. The best qualified clients with large amounts of equity, 30-40% equity in their home, are still in the twos. The worst qualified clients, the absolute worst dregs of society, are 3.5%. That's a fantastic interest rate. So really, where does that come into play when we talk about this equation of, are homes overpriced? What should I do? Should I hold out? Should I wait while homes go up even more? Affordability. So people keep talking about this, and we see headlines. If you look in your Google feed, don't do that, because the clickbait headline is homes. So the one I saw last week is that homes are less affordable than they have been 75% of the time historically. We don't care about historically when we're talking about where our price is going to maximize or where do we hit a cap, because we do. At a certain point, you would run out of buyers who are able to pay more for homes, and we would hit a wall. And you need to do that research in your area. There's a gentleman here, a really accomplished investor in Riverside County, but he runs the numbers for the entire state of California, county by county, and where we've hit a wall previously and homes can't go any higher. And we've got room. We've got room to go, and it depends on where interest rates are. If rates go up to 4%, we've got a little bit of room in Orange and LA County. If rates go down to 2%, we've got a lot of room in Orange and LA County. So those of you that watch know that Jeb and I believe pretty strongly that over the long term, 2, 3, 5 years, rates will continue going lower, despite the fact that in the near term, they are trending higher. They're still really good, but trending lower. So the only thing that would disturb that affordability, like the best numbers I've seen, First American Economic Research, so First American Title, very big company in the real estate business. They have a very good economics arm. They've run the numbers and determined that homes are 40% more affordable than in the 2008 peak. Now, let's remember in the 2007-2008 peak, the sort of a false peak. We went higher than we ever should have because the borrowers didn't actually have to qualify for their loans. So if we say that maybe 50% of that variance of where we are to from there to here was bullshit because people didn't have to qualify for the loans, we're still have 20% more room to get to the affordability levels where we hit the wall last time. So long way of saying, home prices are going to continue going up. Can they go up at the same rate as they did last year? They could, but they can't do it very long. So I do expect prices to moderate, but they're not going to come down. We had another comment here, actually. Here, let's just look. Daniel Soto, I'm saving money and waiting for the crash. Home prices go up faster than you can save money, and home prices are not going to crash at all. And the correction is further down the line. So these are recipes for disappointment. I don't ever, Jeb, we talk about this. You don't want someone to feel pressured into having to move, fear of missing out. I've got to jump in. I have to do it. I have to do something that's not smart for me. But the alternative is, for the next 1, 2, 3 years, we're going to see prices continue to go up. If you don't like prices today, don't come back in 2 years. You're going to like them a lot less.
No, well, while we're just relaying it into each question, let's just throw this one up there. And not that one. AV says, in my area, home prices are higher than what the FHA max limits are, forcing out FHA buyers. So, Josh, what happens here in the next 2 months?
So for FHA and VA, at the end of November, we will get the official numbers from the FHFA Home Price Appreciation Index, and they will set the Fannie Mae Freddie Mac limits. FHA comes out with their increase in limits just after that, and VA, for the conforming balance, follows the Fannie Freddie guidelines. So that's going to happen late November, usually just before or just after Thanksgiving. And for the conventional loans, lenders will start making those loans at those loan limits right away. So the safe estimate of numbers, and we've had a couple of lenders on the wholesale side jump the gun of saying, hey, we'll close the loans at 625 now and hold them all the way through January because we're confident the number is going to be higher than that. So the best guess is somewhere between 630 and 650 will be your conforming limit.
But go ahead.
FHA sets them differently, and they generally release their numbers middle of December. FHA and VA, you can't follow those new loan amounts until January 1. So VA again is weird because they don't technically have a loan limit anymore. So lenders may be able to jump the gun, close them, and then come back and sell them after the first of the year when they fall under the conforming limits.
But what you didn't address there, Josh, is that gives buyers more buying power. So if you're up against limits, right, in his area, home prices are higher than what the FHA limits are. So FHA buyers essentially can't buy those higher priced homes. But what happens when those loan limits increase by 10%, or in the conforming case, 14% as of now? So
think
gives
about
buyers
this.
more buying power.
Yeah, you and I have talked about this. There's difference between willing and able demand. So he's saying in his area, there's willing demand, people that want to buy, but they need to use FHA financing, and the current limits don't allow them to. So what we're talking about, as soon as those loan limits go up, we have an increase in demand for the same supply of homes. So areas like this, for us, it's Riverside, San Bernardino County here in Southern California, they're going to see a spike in prices as people. So we're going to see a big increase. Riverside County is boy, I don't even remember the numbers.
250?
No, that's your conforming, but for FHA, it's even lower than that. So you can get to about 500 on the purchase price. It's going to go up 15%. So you'll be able to go to about 575 on the purchase price. But it's going to be the same story that we've had the last 2 years. Like, there's a relief for about 2 to 3 months, and that relief goes away as those prices on the lower price range, even for Riverside, San Bernardino County, and other similar areas, get pushed up. Like for me, I really, really wish FHA would give up on the concept of county limits, because for us here, Corona is just on the border of Orange County. Right. It has prices similar to or higher than Orange County. They have Riverside County loan limits, but that doesn't make sense because the median income, everything for that area, and areas like Rancho Cucamonga, that are San Bernardino, and get thrown on the other side of it. I really wish they would go to like a metropolitan statistical area where they can look at a more granular view of what home prices are in those areas and enable people. But I've been saying that for 15 years, and FHA hasn't listened yet. So I wouldn't hold my breath for them to fall in line with my thoughts.
All right. So Christine actually loves the channel, so appreciate you being here. Is a PUD. So for those of you who don't know what a PUD is, it's a planned unit development. Home in Rancho Santa Margarita, no HOA, comparable in value, investment appreciation as a single family home. Current listing prices are approximately the same. Thank you for your help. So typically a PUD, a planned unit development, most of the time is attached. I don't know, maybe they don't have to be attached. I'm not familiar with the actual specifications there, but typically they're attached homes. So, will an attached home and a detached single family be comparable? It depends, right? I live in a home that's a PUD. It's considered a PUD. It's attached. It's a single family attached house. Now, the value of my property compared to a single family, depending on where you are in Huntington Beach, is my property's more valuable than that single family. And in other areas of Huntington, those single families are more valuable than my property. So it all depends on what you're comparing it to. I think location of that development has a lot to do with it. If you're like, I'm pretty close to the beach, so the values are going to, fetch a higher premium in those locations versus, a PUD development that's in North Huntington Beach, closer to the freeway, right? That's not going to fetch the same values. Because of location as the location that I'm in that case. So I think it's going to depend. It depends on what you're comparing it to, and a lot of that's going to play a part. So Josh, thoughts on that?
So yeah, what I would say is we see a ton of properties and we are always kind of blown away. A lot of times, or not a lot of times, there are a minority of times where the PUD or condo designation was primarily done for zoning in terms of it looks like a single family residence, and it was done to allow the developer to go to a greater density than single families can be. So it really comes down to everything Jeb said. But if it looks like a condo and feels like a condo, it's probably gonna act in terms of market value fluctuations like a condo. If it looks more like a single family home, it's going to act a lot more like a single family home. The benefit to a PUD versus a condo is, Jeb, you have a buyer right now that's having to deal with. They actually came to you through the show here, that they're putting 10% down. 10% is a nice healthy down payment, but for whatever reason, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have an additional 3/4 point hit to fee, not rate, but it amounts to an almost quarter point increase to the interest rate if you have less than 25% down. That doesn't apply to PUDs. So there can be a benefit there, even from that perspective, that will keep values a little bit higher because the financing's easier. So I wouldn't shy away from it, especially if you're seeing them as functionally similar to the single families in your area. If you pull up and go, well, it looks the same, it's not attached, or if it is attached, you just got to look and say, hey, what's my comfort level with it? Jeb still hasn't fixed our lights here to make them not turn off when we move
That's
around.
great. So I want to go back to a comment I saw earlier, Josh. So, you made a comment earlier about, house prices not being overpriced, right? And so you get Nina, right? She looks to be same Westchester market, or she was starting in Westchester, now in Connecticut. And says, well, if they're not too high, then why are properties having an issue appraising?
I love the question. First of all, and I get distracted by people's little avatars over there. I love the avatar. I love the question. So it's because the appraiser doesn't tell you what the market value of the home. The appraiser does an analysis of what homes have sold for previously. Anytime that homes are appreciating at a rapid rate, they're going to have a difficult time because they're trying to find comparable sales to bracket, one higher, one lower, adjust for differences in the properties. So an appraiser is not the one who determines the value of the home. The market, a willing seller and multiple willing buyers coming to an agreement on a price that they will accept, that is the value of the home at any given time. So don't be confused by an issue with an appraisal, meaning, oh, the home's not worth that. The home may not be worth that, but in general, it's just a flaw in the appraisal process that it's very difficult when homes are rapidly appreciating. And probably the second piece that I would say with that, I think we've had about 5 low appraisals all year out of close to 200 loans. So yeah, sellers are worried about it. I mean, Jeb, wouldn't you say almost every seller in a multiple situation is going back saying who will relieve their appraisal contingency or come in with uncontingent on their appraisal? But the reality is most of them are appraising, especially on purchases, because on a purchase, if on a refi, if your neighbor sells for the highest a home's ever sold, and the home's never sold for $1 million in your neighborhood, your neighbor sells for that, and you need $1 million for your appraisal on your refi, it may still not come in at that level because there's not another person on the other side. An appraiser could come in and say, well, it's bigger, it's more desirable, it doesn't back to the busy street, any number of reasons why they could more conservatively bring your number in. Now, if your house sells also for $1 million and there's 10 offers there, there's not supposed to be a difference. I can just tell you appraisers are much more conservative on a refinance appraisal than on a purchase when we have two parties who have agreed in an open market to a purchase price.
No, good answer. Ricardo's got a question. Can I continue buying foreclosure properties through SB 1079 once a year if they're my primary home for 12 months? So SB 1079, I believe is Senate bill. It's California based, I believe. I don't think it's nationwide, right? SB would be locally.
State bill. Yep.
And so 1079 basically limits investor purchases for a certain period of time on foreclosed properties to allow buyers to come in and buy them as their owner occupied residences for that period of time. So can I continue buying foreclosure properties through that? My guess is, I don't know if you could do it once a year, but you could obviously do it probably once and then turn it over to an investment at some point in the future. I don't know how often you could do it. And if that's your strategy, you got a long time coming because there's not going to be a lot of foreclosures coming to the market. And if there are, there's going to be a lot of competition. So, I don't really see much of a strategy there in trying to buy foreclosed properties. And keep in mind, I can tell you this from experience because I sold a ton of foreclosures back in the last housing crisis for the banks. These banks know what they can get for these properties a lot of times. And they know that they can price them at fair market value, especially in a market with low supply, high buyer demand, and get market value. So if you're expecting to buy a foreclosure at some huge discount, maybe that's the case if the property is completely run down and it needs everything to be done to it, and the bank's just not willing to do that work. But what I can tell you is that a lot of times, or this is what I saw towards the end of the last one, is that I was selling properties for Fannie Mae, and we would go in and we would do carpet, we would do paint, we would do basic, upgrades on that property to get it clean, livable, and it would sell for market value. And I'm telling you, this time is not going to be any different. These banks aren't just going to throw property out there and let them go. It's not that kind of market. So you need to have a better strategy if you're looking for to get a property at a discount, in my opinion. All right, so let's move along. So we talked. Okay, here we go. I don't know what Chris is saying. Instead of sell and buy a new house, should I refinance and rent my present house, and then with the refi money buy a new house? Josh, thoughts on that?
Have a client that did just that, and actually she came from the show here as well, and they listed their house that they had rented. So they live in the city in the Bay Area and had to leave from their home. I think it's about an hour away, so they had to rent it out. And she thought the only way we're going to have money for a down payment anywhere near the city is to sell the home. We talked, we went through it, we were able to refinance it. Just going to break even for her and just get her enough money to buy what they want. So it can be a great idea. I spoke with another client earlier today, and he and I had talked about a year and a half ago. And unfortunately, we didn't talk again because he went and bought a new home without refinancing the one that he left. And he's at $3,600 a month mortgage payment and a $3,000 a month rent. So if you get to a situation like that, that's pretty aggressive when you're saying, hey, I'm going to eat $600 just to maintain ownership of that home. So it came out really well. In his instance, I asked him, well, what's that home worth now? He goes, it's probably about 650. I go, no, I know where it's at. It's worth more than 650. It's worth 800. And when he left a year and a half ago, it was probably worth 625, 650. So you can eat $600 a month for a long time when the house is going up $5,000 a month. But I wouldn't count on it. So just be very careful. If you can get to a situation where you can pull the money you need to buy your new home and keep it at break-even level or better, preferably better. I'm not even super comfortable with the break-even level. We talked about the house that I'm rehabbing in Orange. Once it's done, we're going to find out where the market rents are, and I think I'll have about $200 to $300 a month positive. But on a $3,500, $3,700 a month rent, that's not a lot. Yeah. So you just want to be careful and make sure you have a cushion there. I would love to see you control two assets and benefit from the appreciation of both, but not if you stretch yourself too far and don't have a nice cushion.
No, I think that was, I mean, you nailed it at the end there. And that was going to be my thing is, you know, by pulling out that cash, where does that take your mortgage payment? How much can you rent it for? Are you positive? Are you negative on the cash flow? Are you comfortable with that? Do you have money in the bank if something does go wrong on that property? You're not able to rent it out. Those are all things you need to consider. At the end of the day, I don't know where you're located, but you know, if you were in Southern California, I would tell you that your property is probably going to be worth more in 6 months, a year than it is right now. So if you have the ability to hold on to it, most of the regrets from sellers that I talk to and the older generation is that, you know, I could have purchased that property for so and so and I didn't, or I should have held on to that property and I didn't, and now it's worth X. I think, you know, the future is not going to be any different with regards to home prices. I don't think you're going to have regrets by holding it as long as it makes sense on a monthly basis. So here's one from Turk East Bay. Will there be I was about to say geological. Will there be geographical differences in terms of home appreciation due to the pressure of affordability in high price areas such as San Francisco Bay? Josh, thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, the geographical
I mean, there already
differences.
are geographical differences.
And it's not even just in those areas. Like, look at this, Jeb. You have some friends in Sacramento. We do a lot of business in Sacramento, probably 8 or 10 loans a year. Sacramento's gone through the roof, and it's largely because people that got priced out can commute from there, telecommute from there, work from home from there, and Sacramento has gone through the roof. And Sacramento doesn't have the business base and employment base that the Bay Area does. It's just fortunately close enough. And if you go even closer, look at Oakland. People used to be, oh, Oakland's terrible. No one wants to live there. A lot of gentrification, a lot of higher prices in Oakland. So actually in the area you're at, you know, the scarcity of homes and the proximity to the high paying jobs is going to increase those values. Like an example I love to use, I don't know if any of you guys love architecture and familiar with mid-century modern homes, but Eichler built here in Orange, or Eichler homes were built here in Orange, California, which is not cheap. And they also built in Palo Alto, the same floor plans, the same quality of materials, the same homes. They're ridiculously priced in Orange, anywhere from 1.2 to 1.3. The same home is now 1.9 to 2.1 in Palo Alto. So obviously geographical areas, and you guys say, why is that? Where are the jobs? How well do the jobs pay? When people get priced out of housing, where do they go? And then what happens to prices in those areas?
No, location, right? Let's see. Lamisha says her appraisal came back at purchase price in North Carolina. Got an FHA loan, so she's happy. So congrats on that. Let's see here. Do we have any idea about New Jersey housing market and what advice you could give to a first-time home buyer? Also, do you think investing in condos as a first-time home buyer is okay? So I'm going to kind of eliminate the first part of the question just because Josh and I aren't based in New Jersey. So we'll go to the second part. But what I will tell you is that I know agents that work in New Jersey. I know, we know lenders that do business in New Jersey as well. Their housing market is a lot like here, right? You got people that wanted to get out of the city, right? The density of New York during the pandemic. So they went to the suburbs, if you will. New Jersey was part of that, other parts of New York and what have you, and shot prices up there. Low supply, high demand. I don't think that's really changed. I haven't heard any big changes in those markets. So I think you're probably, my advice would be, I mean, no different than buying in any other market is that, find a payment, a purchase price that you're comfortable with, have money in the bank, have a longer term horizon, all that good stuff, and stop second guessing the market, which would take me into the last part of the question is condos. Are condos okay for first time home buyers? You have to be okay with that, right? It doesn't matter what anybody else is okay with. Just understand, in New Jersey and New York and some of these other areas, condos might appreciate at a faster level than single families, just depending on location and proximity and all that stuff. Here in Southern California, typically you don't see the same appreciation on a condo as you would a single family. Doesn't make anything wrong with it. There are definitely pros and cons to living in condos and not. So you've got to decide what's right for you. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer there. Just it's comfortability. Josh, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, we talked about this a few weeks ago in terms of, for us here in Southern California, when the market is down, so say 2008, 2009, 2010, what happens first is the coastal areas start appreciating. As those get less affordable, people go more inland until you get to the point where we have homes in Lancaster, Victorville that you couldn't give away in 2010. People are out there paying good prices for. Condos are somewhat similar. It's a way to keep affordability or to be able to afford a home in an area where you otherwise couldn't. So they appreciate later than single family homes do, but they appreciate to similar levels. Now, on the flip side is where it's dangerous, because as prices correct, which they will someday, I don't see it anytime soon in the next year or two, but when you see a correction, you'll generally see condos fall first and more than single families. But it's not a reason to not do it. It's just something to be aware of when you're buying in.
Now, and then Mo A just asked same question on opinion of the tri-state area, particularly New Jersey. I think kind of touched on it there in that. I think you're gonna. I mean, I think it continues. Now we're not there, but it comes down to supply and demand. Until you see a big change in that, you're not going to see much of a change in the market. We did have a question up here about an appraisal that I wanted to throw up, and I don't remember. I don't see where it is now. Let's see here. Somebody asked about, should they get an appraisal in the process, or is it a wait? Oh, here we go. Just got my offer accepted on a house. Should I do an appraisal or a waste of money? So if you're buying and you're getting a loan, the lender is going to dictate whether or not you need an appraisal. If you need an appraisal, you're going to have to order one. You don't have the choice of not doing one. Now, in some cases, you might get an appraisal waiver and you don't have to do one. You can choose to do one, I guess, if you wanted. Same thing with a cash offer. Should you choose to do an appraisal? I would say it's probably a waste of money in most cases, right? I mean, a lot of times the reason your offer might get accepted on a cash offer is because of the lack of an appraisal. But I guess it comes down to what you want to do there. I mean, if I were buying a property and the appraisal got waived and I was comfortable with my price, I don't need somebody to verify it, because, I mean, that's what I was willing to pay for that property. Josh, thoughts on that one?
No, same thing. Lender's going to dictate whether you need it. What I would kind of add, you hinted at, you can get a waiver with 20% down, a well-qualified borrower with 20% down. The automated underwriting system might come back and waive the appraisal. At that point, you have a decision to make. Should I do it or not? If you do it through the lender and the appraisal did come in low, you're stuck with it. Once you do the appraisal, they can't unsee the appraisal. So if you felt like you wanted one, you had a waiver, I would take the waiver and then order my own private appraisal for the value, so that the lender's not involved and not seeing it. But yeah, for the most part, unless you're paying cash, it's going to be up to the lender as to whether you need that appraisal.
All right, there you go.
Jeb, let me throw one up here. I would normally ignore stuff like this. So Ream Beam pipes in. He wanted to share with everyone that he's doing a VA loan with New Day USA, and they approve you early in the process, and you can close in 3 weeks, and he suggests using them. So we've talked about this before when people in the comment section are answering questions. Most often those answers are wrong and dangerous. This answer is wrong and dangerous. Besides the fact that it's uncool to show up to someone else's live and promote a business that you may have an interest in or just really do like. New Day USA, Veterans United, Navy Federal Credit Union are predatory lenders towards veterans. They have significantly higher rates and fees. They have narrower guidelines, their own overlays that they add. And we've talked about this before. The most important thing in selecting a lender is that you're able to work with an expert loan officer. New Day USA is a call center full of children who just learned how to do loans about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So you get low levels of knowledge and service and expertise, and you get higher rates for that. So just, and if you don't have to believe me, there was a survey done last year, and they mapped out, as you can Google it, they mapped out every lender, because there are lenders just like this. The worst thing about companies like New Day and Veterans United is they run around saying, we are the #1 veteran lender in America. We take great care of veterans. And then when you see, because it's all tracked and it's all in the HMDA data, and you map it out, they charge higher rates to veterans than any other companies do, while telling you, hey, we're built by veterans. We love veterans. We're going to take great care of them. We actually have a business. we're highly for profit. We have a relationship with someone who was one of the founders of Veterans United, and he is a veteran, and he left because of what they were doing to veterans and what they devolved into. No different than New Day USA, no different than Navy Federal. So if you have low expectations and you want to pay high rates, jump right in. But other than that, find a local expert, preferably a broker, especially on government loans. Brokers are going to be significantly cheaper than any direct lender versus other options.
No, there you go. And if you need one of those referrals, the link's in the description below. Let's go back here to questions. So I saw a question. Oh, so Maddie was here last week. Maddie has a condo up in Burbank area. Sent it to me, gave me my insights on it. He said it didn't sell this week. So sorry to hear that, man. Did you change photos? I'm interested to hear if you got new photos. If you did, then just it's a matter of time. I've actually let's talk about this because his condo didn't sell in this week. Now I talk about a video tomorrow. I put out a video tomorrow where I talk about this as well. But you guys have heard me talk about a condo that I have here locally, right? And so I'm just going to give you a quick rundown on what's happened on that property over the last 45 days, right? So it hasn't even been 45 days, but I'm just using that as a reference. So I listed a property here in Southern California, in Mission Viejo. It's a 3-bed. It's a 3-bedroom. It's listed at $340,000. It's a studio. It's only 400 square feet. Very first weekend, 2 offers on the property, right? Both above the asking price. My seller wanted to rent back, blah, blah, blah. We couldn't negotiate either offer. Both deals fell apart. Set on the market for about 30 days. No offers, right? We lowered the price from $340 down to $333, $7,000, just over 2% on that. And no action. Last week, interest rates went up, right? Interest rates went up about 1/4, 0.3%, kind of across the board. That weekend, we had 4 showings on that property. We had 4 offers on that property. Now we're back above the original asking price. So we lowered the price from $340 down to $333. 4 offers. We're back above our asking price, and we're in escrow. We got the rent back. We got everything. So what changed, right? We lowered the price. Everybody says, hey, price reduction in a market, you should be able to offer significantly less on that property. Wrong. Inventory has gone down. Interest rates have gone up. People panicking? Is that what's happening? Are people worried that they might not be able to get a property at a certain price because there's no property to choose from? Rates are going up. People are getting scared. Or is it people that are just new buyers coming into the market, finding what they want? It's really hard to say. But what I'm telling you is that, there is activity still out there. And if your property is priced correctly, it might not sell the first weekend. That's part of the problem, I think, with sellers in this world. And I'm not picking on Maddie or anybody else for that matter, is that, they watch shows like HGTV or they talk to their friends and they say, oh, the property sold the very first weekend with 50 offers. And then your property doesn't sell in the first weekend with, at all, or maybe you don't have the showings or the offers or whatever. And you immediately wonder what's wrong. And in some cases, there are things that are wrong, but in many cases, that's not reality. Like what we've seen over the last 6-8 months. I mean, it's reality because it happened, but it's not normal, right? It's not normal to sell a property in 2 days with 50 offers. It just, the average in California right now, I think, is about 17 days or so for properties going into escrow, give or take. Might be more. I mean, it might be less than that. I'm just using that number. So that means 17 days on average. That means some properties take 50, some take 1. And it comes to that number at some point. So don't get too caught up in things not happening immediately. Just focus on the things you can control, right? How's the property show up online? How's it priced compared to other homes in the neighborhood? Is it available to see? And let the market do its thing. So kind of went off on a spin there, but I feel like, go ahead.
Along that pricing topic, we had talked a few weeks ago. I told you 2 homes came on the market in the vicinity of my home, and you're like, these people think they're going to get the prices that the really beautiful homes in the neighborhood got. And so I was spectacularly right and spectacularly wrong. One of them has already had $150,000 of price cuts and hasn't sold. And the other one sold for $100,000 more than they were asking for it. So it's a crazy market. And like you said, Jeb, the homes that are not just obviously the home runs that are beautiful that everyone would want and is going to sell for top dollar, you just never know. Some of them just need the right buyer to come along, and there's almost no
It only
rhyme or
takes
reason
one.
to it. Yeah.
It only takes one buyer. So, and Matt said he made some updates to the photos, but didn't replace. I gave you the best advice I could, Maddie, the best advice I could. Let's see here.
It's sort of like a dating profile, right? If you don't put the good pics on the dating profile, you're not going to get a lot of thumbs or swipe. Is it swipe right, swipe left?
Yeah, I think no, I mean, agreed. You got to get buyers interested, right? And buyers have access to so much information right now. And again, if it doesn't catch their eye to begin with, if the photos look too dark, there's something not right, people just move on, right? There's it's got to pull them in to get to look at the photos. You got to get people to come and want to see it, right? And that's why you hire a professional photographer to take your photos. That's why they use wide angle lenses to make the rooms look bigger. We're not trying to, pull the wool over anybody's eyes here, but we do want people in the property so that they can get that emotional attachment, if you will, and want to make an offer. If you can't get them into the property to get that emotion, you're not going to get the offer. So, right. So that's why we're using a professional to take the photos. I'm not there with my I don't have an iPhone, but my Pixel taking photos for my listings. I'm paying somebody, money to go and professionally shoot those photos with the expectation that that's going to bring the buyers in. That's part of what I'm getting paid to do as a listing agent is me pay for professionals to do their job. So anyway, that's 2 cents on that.
In 13 days, Jeb, we get new pixels.
I know. Wow, we got to buy them, but we should hopefully get them.
We get to buy new pixels.
Yes, we do. When before closing, does lender usually call an employer for a verbal employment verification? So, Josh, prior to COVID, the pandemic, lenders would call and do a verbal verification of employment. And I think they probably, like at that time, I think they were only doing one. Now, but as COVID came along, they were doing it like after docs were signed, like literally before the funding. Is that still taking place? How does the VOE work?
For the most part, we're back to normal guidelines. It has to be within 10 days of the note date. So generally what lenders are doing is right before your loan docs go out, they're going to do a verbal verification of employment and make sure that you still are employed, that nothing has changed. So it's a good question to ask. It worries me that Harold is asking because he might be trying to work around the system or manipulate something with that. I have never suffered the problem of a client not getting a verbal verification of employment at closing. My wife is a wholesale account executive. She sees a lot more files than I do. And it happens 2 or 3 times a year that someone thought they could quit their job or gets fired. The quit is the amazing thing. If someone gets fired, you don't control that. And you could, think, hey, I'm just going to try and keep it on the down low, and hopefully my loan closes before they find out. The person quitting and trying to hide that from their lender is amazing, especially if they don't have a new job. Quitting, changing jobs can often be accounted for if you already have a new job lined up and can be okay. But just be very careful with it because the lender will check. It's not nearly as stringent as it was in the middle of the worst of COVID, but they're absolutely going to re-verify employment before sending your loan docs out to escrow.
All right, good stuff. Turo Man has a good question here. So my mortgage loan servicer is transferring to a different company this month. Payment due on the 10th. Transfer to be done by last week of October. Should I wait to make my payment once transferred? So oftentimes when you get a mortgage, right, your original lender will sell your loan to a different servicer. So, you close with Wells Fargo, for example. Wells Fargo could sell your loan to Mr. Cooper, for example, just, in this instance. So, you were making your payments to Wells Fargo. Now you're making your payments to Mr. Cooper. Nothing changes there other than who you're making your payments to. So in this case, Josh, should they continue to make their payment to the original servicer or wait for that transfer to happen?
I
And
wouldn't
what's the
worry.
risk?
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. So if it's due on the 10th and that transfers we done last week of October, so we're talking the 23rd, 25th, 27th, you could have a 15-day late fee there, and there's no real benefit in it. These lenders handle transfers of servicing regularly. As long as it's with the current lender, I would make it on time, do it through the portal or your normal ACH payment, and you'll have a record or documentation of it. Again, servicing gets transferred often. They know how to do this. They know how to account for the payments, even if you made the payment to the old lender. Have I had clients come up where they had a pain in the ass situation where they had to make some phone calls to get it straightened out? Yes. I would make it as early as possible to the current lender and make sure I have the new welcome package from the new servicer before I attempted to make a payment to them.
Yeah, I think Josh nailed it there. I mean, the biggest potential there is that, you know, it transfers to the new lender. You haven't paid it. You get a service fee late or whatever reason, or potentially a 30-day late if they show they never received the payment or something crazy in that transfer. So you just want to get it done sooner rather than later, I think. Let's see. Josh, we are having difficulty with getting our loan finalized and a closing date set because the home is going through probate. Credit has 2 hard pulls because it has been more than 45 days. Help. So what do you do in this case?
Is there an issue with the credit? Did the second hard pull give you a problem? And actually, the credit reports are good for 120 days from pull to closing. So you have to be closed. We've had a few where we pre-approve people and it takes them 30, 60, 90 days to find a property. And we do end up at 121, 122 days and pull a second credit report late in the process. But the probate issue is the more important part. And I'm sure probate varies by state. For us in California, there's 2 types of probates. One that where the administrator has full authority, meaning they can accept an offer and close, and the other requires court approval. So they have to get the offer, accept it, go to court, get it approved, and there's an overbid process that can take time and is a pain in the ass. But those are the 2 things I would want to know. Do they have authority or do they not have authority to sell? If it has to go through court approval, what are the steps and the timing on that? But you shouldn't need to pull a new credit report every 45 days. After 120, we should need the new one. Jeb, you had our email info up here, but if we throw that up, you can send me some more info, Don, because I'd kind of like a little back and forth to get some more info to get you a fully accurate answer on that.
Yeah, and then what I would say with regards to the closing date, I mean, there's not much you can do. If you're waiting on the probate, you're waiting on the probate. So until you have that confirmation, you're stuck there with regards to that. Now, I will add Josh and I's information up there. So there's the information. While I'm doing this, also going to ask a favor. If you're watching right now, you haven't done so already, hit the like button. There's 225 people watching, got 80 likes. Really want to get that number up. Josh's lights just went out. We
just
can't
keep going out.
lights here. So give us a thumbs up if you enjoy the content. We do appreciate you being here. So I'll throw that back up there. We'll get to some comments here. Let's see. I'm going back. So Tyree. Go ahead, Josh. You got one? I mean,
No.
All right.
No. Well, I would go with Tyree. It could be Tyree, but I'm going to go with Tyree.
All right.
Like Kyrie Irving, only TH.
There you go. First time home buyer. We have our agent now need a closing agent. Not sure if a real estate agent is the same. Help, please. So when I think of closing agent here in California, I think of an escrow company. In your state, it might be an attorney. But that's something that should be, as if you're a first time home buyer, typically in this market, that's done by the seller in most cases. So it's not really something you can control. I might be incorrect there depending on where you're located, but I think you're probably talking about the company that's actually going to close it. It's a third party that facilitates both the buyer and the seller. So I would say if you have an agent, your agent is the person that should be able to answer that question for you. Let's see. All right. Samuel has a question here. How long can you be pre-approved and be locked in at the rate you're pre-approved for? So when you answer that, Josh, I want you to also answer the question, can I lock my loan if I'm pre-approved before I actually find a property? Like I want to lock in my rate right now before they go up, but I haven't found a home. So
in real terms, the answer is no. There are lenders, mainly the one that bombards the airwaves and billboards and magazines with ads that will talk about a lock and shop. You'll pay a premium for it. Rocket can afford to do it because they have awful rates to begin with. But they just don't get used in the real world because there's a cost to locking that loan and offering the float down option, which most that offer it do. So for the most part, it's just not used unless you were in a it's sort of like when we talk about this. I have new construction. It's not going to be done till December. Should I lock? Well, only if you believe that rates are going to rapidly appreciate because the cost of that long-term lock is so much higher. Well, the cost of the hedge on a no property lock against the potential for increases in rates in the future, it's just not valuable to do. It doesn't, the cost of it is not valuable enough that anyone would take it. So we do have lenders that offer it. Never had a client look at the numbers and go, yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
So how long can you be pre-approved for, Josh? If you're pre-approved, how often do I need to update that if I'm a buyer?
What I tell everyone is your pre-approval is as valid as long as nothing changes in the underlying situation. So as long as you have the same amount of money in the bank, your credit score doesn't change, your employment and income doesn't change. The one variable that you don't really control is interest rates. Again, if rates shot to the moon, it could impact what your maximum qualification is for. In real terms, they just don't move that quickly. So I'm not going to go back. When we have a client that's pre-approved, we try to reach out every Thursday, just give them a quick market update, ask if they're going to be looking at homes this weekend. And we don't, in that process, I'm not asking for them to update stuff. We might ask them, hey, has anything changed in your scenario that we want to update the file? And the answer is no. So as long as there's not something coming down the turnpike that we should be aware of, sometimes you'll have a client say, yeah, I'm going to switch jobs next week. Okay, cool. Get me the details on the new job. So as long as you know that your underlying qualifications haven't changed, you're fine. Now, items in the file have dates of how long they're good for. We have to have a pay stub within 30 days of the application. Bank statements generally within 30 days. We can get away with a little bit longer sometimes. We talked about earlier, the credit report's good for 120 days from the time we pull it. It has to be within 120 days at closing. So those things will age out if it takes a while to find a home. But as long as nothing changes in the underlying qualifications, no need to say that, hey, my pre-approval is not valid. There are lenders that will put, hey, valid for 15 days, valid for 30 days. It's really valid as long as the underlying circumstances don't change, and we will re-verify all of that.
Got it. All right. So Tourman followed up, says, funny, that's who my servicer is, Mr. Cooper going to loan care. So the only reason I put this on there is because same situation. I had Mr. Cooper. My loan went to loan care prior to the pandemic. Easy transfer, no issues. You'll be fine. But yeah, so I was in the same boat as you. So I'm really confused here, Josh, because I think we're getting insulted, but then we get a super chat. So you tell me if I'm wrong. Stacy says, I know why you can't get subscribers. Laugh out loud. Oh, geez, so funny. But then Stacy says, here's $5. And I have a question. Hey, Josh, what do you think of a person that says there's some people that just aren't meant to, that are just meant to rent their whole life, that they were never meant to own a home?
I don't know. It's an interesting the super chat and the
insult,
the back end of the super chat, and then the question. But when they say some people are meant to rent.
Hold on. Here we go. Careful. People, if you don't agree with them, they'll just delete your comments. I don't even want your money at this point, and I don't even want to address your question. Hey, I mean, do you want to, Josh? I don't know. Nobody's deleted any. I haven't deleted any comments.
And no one has to agree with anyone. I don't claim
what you'd agree with. Anyone.
I don't claim to have a monopoly on knowledge. What I can say is I've done this for 26 years. We read just about everything that comes down the turnpike. I have numbers and factual basis for what we're saying. We don't throw out opinions here without something to substantiate them. And again, the biggest thing that I don't understand is if I come across something that I don't enjoy, I just leave. You don't have to watch. There are people here, 218 exactly right now, that are enjoying the content. So I'm not understanding why.
We'll move along here, but we are going to answer the question here. Josh, what do you think of a person that, when somebody says you're just meant to rent, you're not meant to own?
Let me answer it from this perspective. At any given time, if you look at the homeownership rate in America, it's about 65%. After the crash, it went down to about 62%. Before the crash, with terrible lending policies, it hit almost 70%. So let's say at any given time, 65% of Americans choose to own their home, American households. So 35% don't. Some of them, it can just be life stage. Hey, I'm 25, I just got out of college, I'm not ready to own yet. Some could be I'm moving from here to there. But a lot of those people, like when we look at the unemployment rate is about 5%, and you say that's close to full employment because there's 5% of people that are unemployable. There's a percentage of the population that truly, they're not meant to rent, they're just not capable of successfully owning. They can't keep a job, they can't manage their credit, they can't save money for a down payment. And those people are perpetual renters. It's not that they were meant to be a renter. It's just that they're not capable of successfully owning a home. So we get policies, we talked about this a few weeks ago, we get policies in Washington, D.C. that decide, hey, all these good things come out of homeownership, let's make homeownership easier, rather than saying the people that clear the bar to homeownership have positive impacts on their community. They say, well, let's lower the bar because homeownership is magic. And it always fails. And we've had like 3 cycles of this going back to the late 60s, early 70s. Every time the government gives massive incentives to buy homes to push up that homeownership rate past that 65, 66% per level, we have bad outcomes. So that's as best as I can answer that one.
No, I think that's a good answer. I mean, the reality is, are there some people that shouldn't own a home? Absolutely. There are, for sure. But that doesn't mean that can't change, based on what you just said, Anyway, since we were insulted, I'm going to put some comments up here, some compliments rather. Cindy said we both helped her through the process, so we appreciate you you watching and following us through the journey. We also have Claudia, and I'm bringing this up here too. So Claudia has been watching the videos lately, loves the generosity and honesty. Just started the process, has no idea where to start. It's overwhelming. It is absolutely overwhelming. And you're probably in the most difficult market that we've seen probably in my career. And I've been doing this almost 20 years. It's tough. It's tough to be a home buyer right now. There's a lot of moving parts. And not only are there a lot of moving parts, there are a lot of moving parts that are moving way faster than they would in your typical market. So I would say the very first thing you need to do is one of 2 things. You either need to get pre-approved, so you need to find a lender that can approve you or go through the process of approving you or trying to pre-approve you and guide you through that, answer your questions and tell you what you need to do and get that pre-approval so you know how much you can afford, and or find a real estate agent in the market that you want to be in and let that real estate agent have that conversation and direct you to a mortgage professional who can get you that pre-approval. You're not going to be able to do much in the process of buying a home without actually knowing how much you can afford, what the payment is, having that security of the pre-approval. Once you have that, it's almost like relieving the stress of the process to some extent, because I would say getting the loan is probably the most important piece of the puzzle because it really dictates everything else from that point forward. Now, finding a home in this market is not an easy task. So I won't, typically what I would tell buyers in the past is once you're approved, it's the fun part, right? We get to go look at houses. We get to do the exciting part of figuring out where you want to be, all of that. Honestly, not really that exciting at the moment. It's a lot of stress because of how quickly things are moving, not a lot of options to choose from. But I would tell you, just get with a good lender, understand the ins and outs of the process. I have a first-time home buyer course. That's something I promote. It's in the description below where I go over a lot of those pieces of the process. But I would say just, watch videos from people online, get a course from somebody. And when I say watch a video online, I'm not talking about what's happening in the housing market video. I'm talking about like things that actually, what's an FHA loan? What's a conventional loan? What are property taxes? What are, those sorts of things so that you can actually learn about the process. And once you have that, then you're a buyer, right? And understanding where you need to be in the process. And if you need a referral, well, there's a link in the description below. You can hit that. I'll throw it up here on the screen in a little bit as well. and we can refer you to a realtor or a mortgage professional in your market. So anyway,
I don't know if you guys noticed the subtle shade there that Jeb threw, but he said after you go deal with that boring mortgage guy, then you can come to me and we can do the exciting stuff and go see houses and do the cool stuff.
that was like 2 years ago.
Okay, well, but seriously, the question I get a million billion times, and I believe Jeb, you may have actually done a video on this, is why does my realtor always try and push me to talk to the mortgage guy? Are they getting paid? They've got to be getting a kickback.
No, I wish I
No,
was.
yeah, it would be nice.
Yeah, I'd be
It's
rich.
it's one of the crazy thing is a realtor can get a referral fee for referring a deal to a realtor out of their area, but they can't receive anything for a settlement service. So mortgage, escrow, title, any of that stuff. So there's never a kickback. It's actually against federal law. But there's a very valid reason why you want to start with a lender, and two of them, like one is self-serving. A realtor doesn't want to take you around showing you a bunch of homes to find out that you don't qualify. Their time is their income, so they don't want to waste their time if you're not qualified. But more importantly, they want to know that you've gone through, that you know what your monthly payment is going to be, what price range to show you homes in, and how much cash you need to have. So that front end, it's not that I'm the most important person in the transaction. It's that once we do get the boring, mundane part of going through your finances and running the numbers, you now have certainty. The loan is the most stressful thing besides you write an offer with Jeb and waiting until you get the loan, the acceptance on that. Those are the two most stressful things, is us going through and telling you, you're fully pre-approved, you can do this, your credit's good enough, you can afford this payment, and you have enough money to close. Those are the big things that we talk about. Here's what you can buy, here's what the monthly payment's going to be, here's how much money you need to have. From there, the only stress you're going to have is getting an offer accepted, which is very stressful in this market, but it is the best way. It's sort of like a downhill path from there, especially once you get a property under contract. We have two clients that opened up transactions on Monday morning. They wrote offers over the weekend, got acceptance Monday. We're already approved. So the loan's approved because all of that legwork up front makes it really easy on this end, and you don't have to stress or worry about, am I qualified? Am I going to get approved?
No, absolutely. Nailed it. Nailed it. Good stuff. Richard gave us a $5 super chat. He's a real subscriber, and we appreciate real subscribers around here. And appreciate the support on the content as well. Maddie also did the same thing. Thanks to all, including Jennifer. Jennifer, unfortunately, there's no way for me to transfer the money to you and or Josh. I'm stuck here, so I get to keep it. Thank you guys.
So he has to spend it because he doesn't want to hoard it all.
No, but I do appreciate the support, guys. You guys are awesome. Let's see here. We got a lot of compliments here. I mean, I feel like we could turn this into a compliment show, but I don't want to do it.
I think
or
you
I
paid.
kind of do.
I think
mean,
you
we got
paid
sense of humor comments. Like,
you paid the lady to insult you so that then you could get you were trolling for your own compliments, I believe is what you were doing.
No, absolutely. So let's see here. We got some.
Hold on, Jeff. We got Mo A. Similar question, and again, let's not even get bogged down. It's again about New Jersey. Sorry, not for buyers, but for sellers. He owns a multifamily property with an attached lot. I'm getting unsolicited offers from developers. Is this a time to sell, or should I wait till 2022 for a better offer? And again, we don't know your market. We don't know the specific property. But if I had multifamily and you've owned it for a while, it sounds like it's bringing in money and making you money. I do believe the market's going to continue going up, and if you have developers that want the property and the lot next to it, sounds like something that's desirable if you're getting unsolicited offers. I mean, a lot of people get unsolicited offers in this market, but if you're getting multiples of them, it says that you have something that's desirable, and I don't see that changing in the next year or two.
No, I agree with Josh. And let me clarify. When you mean unsolicited offer, are you getting an actual offer, or are you getting a letter in the mail that says, I have a buyer that wants to buy your lot, and whatever, just traditional marketing that's trying to get you to list your property with them? And, they're going to go to you and say, well, that buyer didn't really like it, but if we put it on the market, then we can list it. Because that goes around, right? There's a lot of BS out there with regards to, I have a buyer that wants to buy your property. And in the reality is it's a marketing tactic to try to get listings. Now, if they're true offers and you're getting people that are coming to you unsolicited, and wanting to make an offer, chances are you've got something that's a great property. And if you put it on the market, you're going to get way more offers than just the few unsolicited that you have, and you're likely to drive up the price. But I would tell you the same thing that Josh said. And to some extent, if you have a property that you paid down, multifamily, New Jersey, do you need to sell it? What, I mean, it sounds like it's probably a good income, bringing in a lot of, decent income for you. And if that's the case, multifamily, probably, it's desirable. Can't build a lot of property in New Jersey, depending on where you are, because of, available land. Chances are it's going to continue to appreciate, especially in a market with low supply. So I would say, unless you have a reason to sell it, maybe you hold tight. But if you do decide to sell it, if it's multifamily, you need to have an exit plan. All right. Don't just be thinking, hey, I'm going to be able to cash in on this. What are you going to do with the proceeds that you get from that property? Are you going to 1031 it into something else? Or are you going to have to pay capital gains on it? What's the exit strategy? Because if you're selling in New Jersey in a place that doesn't have any inventory, are you going to be able to find something to replace it? That's something that you have to consider. Everybody right now just wants to capitalize on, hey, I'm going to sell my home for the most amount of money, and I'm going to go out and rent something, or I'm going to go out and buy something. And then they get hit shell shock when they go do that, and they go, well, there's nothing to buy. Like, I can't find anything. I can't even rent anything. Should I have sold? So all of that stuff plays a part. So have an exit plan, stick to it. I think that's as important in this market as deciding on when you sell.
We talk about this all the time, and what you said there, sell and do what? Have a strategy. Don't just sell because the number's right. There was a comment earlier. It was just a comment, so we didn't post a question. Someone had mentioned that they sold earlier this year and they can't get their offer accepted. They're trying to write an offer, can't get an offer accepted. So their plan was to jump in, but you can kind of get behind it as the market's rapidly appreciating and can't get back in. So, Jeb, I got a good one here, and it's actually a more general question than it sounds like. Corey Wark says, at what point does your loan get locked in a refi for an investment property? Doesn't matter if it's an investment property. A property is a property is a property. If you're getting a loan, you have to make the decision when to lock your interest rate. For 90% plus of our clients, we lock at the time that we are, not when you apply, but when you say, yes, I want to move forward with my refinance, or yes, I have a property under contract. There's a reason for that. On our refinances, we close them in 3 weeks or less. So most people are not gamblers by nature. Some people are, and even at that point, this guy right here, you want to say, so are you conservative or are you aggressive? If you're aggressive and you're willing to gamble, and we say, okay, is now the time to gamble? When you're looking at interest rates, only 3 things can happen, and 2 of them are good. They can stay the same. So if we get to a shorter time frame lock, that's better for you. Even if rates stay the same, they can get better, which obviously is good for you, or they can go up. The problem is when they go up faster than they come down. So when we're trying to take advantage of not locking and floating in that 3-week time frame where we're trying to close your loan, unlikely that we're going to see a huge movement in rates. If they go up like they did 2 weeks ago, they can spike 0.25% in a couple of days. Most people can deal with lost opportunity, meaning a slightly lower rate, more than they can with an actual cost of having a higher interest rate. So for us, for the majority of our clients, we lock at the time you're deciding to move forward, either getting a contract or telling me, yes, we want to do this refinance. But it's up to you, and your mortgage advisor should be able to have that conversation with you and say, where are we at in the current market? Right now, I think we're likely to trend sideways, but we are right at a floor of support. And if that floor of support gives way, we're going to lose another 0.25% in interest. So that's why those clients that got their properties under contract on Monday were locked on Monday when rates were better than they are today. And who knows where they're going to be relative to next Monday, next Tuesday, but they're approved. They have certainty. They can deal with their appraisals, their inspections, and not worry about their financing.
All right. Great explanation. We got one here that's going to be tough to answer, quite frankly. So H. Gray gave us a $10 super chat, so appreciate that. Asking us to compare loan products, the process and qualifications to buy a lot and build with Santa Cruz fire recovery permit. So I'm assuming they Santa Cruz maybe got a fire, they have, burnt down maybe, and they're building something with a new permit, saying that they have a W-2 job, Schedule C filer the past 2 years, 75 gross income, little bit less in 2020 due to COVID, USDA versus conventional. So Josh, I don't know if this is something that needs to be emailed for more clarification, or if you want to try to do this quickly.
I absolutely would love to answer this. So Schedule C filer the past 2 years and going to a new W-2 job, as long as we're in a similar or same line of work, that's not a problem. Going the other way from W-2 to Schedule C would be a big problem for us. So you have a good credit score. Doesn't sound like the income is a problem because we're going from Schedule C to W-2. USDA for versus conventional, a little bit more complicated on that. We don't know what the loan size is that we're going to end up at. We don't even know USDA eligibility. Santa Cruz is fairly built out. Most USDA eligible areas have lower populations. So would love to look at that. So please send me an email. Would love to walk through this for you and get you a more accurate answer. But until we know what's the value of the home when it's built, how much money are we putting down, what does the loan amount look like, it's hard to answer that, but definitely do want to get you the right answer. So we can kind of go back here in Jeb's branding and throw up the banner there with that content.
Yeah, I'll do it. You got it here. I'll throw it up. So actually, we'll just throw up your email here. Let me see 1 second. So there we go. So Josh's email's at the top. Just email him there. We'll get you an answer. I feel like we're not doing you value because you gave us $10 and we can't answer your question, but it's pretty complex and it would take a lot of going back and forth and in order to get us there. So,
and Jeb, not only did we not answer the question, I have a question of my own. How do they have this wonderful fancy script for their name? Everyone else just gets plain old Arial or Calibri or whatever it is. Look at where it says H Gray. It's a fancy G and a fancy Y. I don't know what they're doing.
They're no idea. Maybe it came with the permit from Santa Cruz. Let's see. Okay, so here we go. Rick Carrington. Question: I have a mortgage for $1,400 a month. I can rent it out for $1,700 a month. How would that work out buying another property?
So super simple. When you're going to move out of a property, a departing residence, we don't have the history of the tax return to know what your vacancy and expenses are going to be. So we're going to take that $1,700 and we're going to give you 75% of that. So the 25% is just a vacancy and expense factor since we don't have the actual history. That gives us $1,275. So your mortgage is $1,400. So we have $125 negative for your qualifying purposes. It's treated no differently than if you had a student loan or an auto loan with $125 monthly payment. That's just factored into your debt to income ratio, and we qualify you as we would for any other loan.
Gotcha. All right, there you go. So moving along.
I just wanted to clarify something here real quick.
Yep.
Gabriella said, oh, you have to pay first before they can read your comments. No, some people have volunteered. And if you feel like you're not getting your question answered, we have a lot of questions over here. We do the best we can to stay on top of the question feed there and go through them in order as they come in. But some people just like to contribute to the show, and some people want to make sure that they get an answer as quickly as possible to their question. They don't have time to stick around to the end of the show to see if we get to it.
No, good way of addressing that. I didn't see the question. Camur. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. But anyway, with SB9 and SB10, do you think homes with bigger lots will be more valuable? So SB9 and SB10 are here in California. They're Senate bills that allow splitting of lots to build additional properties. And the easy answer is yes, absolutely. I do. I do think if the lot is sizable, we've already seen it with regards to ADUs. The ADU law was passed a year ago or two now, which allowed, basically any residents in the state of California to build a separate dwelling on their property, an accessory dwelling unit, auxiliary dwelling unit, however you want to put it, granny flat, whatever. And we've already seen lots that are more sizable, larger lots sell for a premium because of that. And so I think SB9 with the splitting of lots and the fact that you can build, ADUs even on those splits creates more value. So yes.
Hey, Jeb,
Yep.
This is a good and interesting one. I'd love to hear your take on it because it's a tough question to answer. So Chris Hurto says, might be a rookie question, but it's not. And I'll even tell you why I can say it's not, but maybe I'm not on the right channel anyway. How do I evaluate the price I can rent my current house for only comps or other methods. So we talked earlier that I'm contemplating, do we keep the house in Orange and rent it? Do we sell it and exchange into something else? We've got a number of options, and the thing that's going to play into that is, what can we rent it for? So we've talked to a few of the neighbors that know properties in the complex. It's a single family, but it's a little infill development. There's like 20 units in there. So we've asked to see what others rent for in there. There's a tool online that you have to pay for, but it's Rentometer Pro. And it will give you a number, and it's not the greatest. It generally understates what the rent is. You can look on Zillow. You can see they have a rent estimate. Also not the greatest, but probably close to as good as the Rentometer. Where we're at with it is, I have a property manager for another property, although he may not manage this for us. Once the project is done, he's going to come out and take a look at it and tell us, in his professional opinion, what they think they could rent it for. It really is difficult because there's not a tool or a database to go to and say, this is it. So I have another property that my sister and I inherited from my father. I manage that, and every time we put it on the market, I go through this whole process and strategy, and you put it on the market, and you never know until you start getting appointments to show the property. Is it too high? Is it too low? And the people will tell you pretty quickly. They're just like the comment section here. People aren't shy about telling you what they think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you said definitely not a rookie question by any means. It's tough. I mean, what I tell people all the time, and you guys have probably heard me say this if you've been watching my channel or any videos right now, is it's tough to be a real estate agent in regards to dictating what a property will sell for, what a property will lease for, just because you don't know what buyers are willing to do when they don't have a lot of options, right? I might think a property's worth 235, for example, 2.35 million, and the seller might want 2.5, and she ends up getting 2.5 because that's the market. That's a real life example of a property that I sold a couple months ago, right? And it was because there's a lack of supply. It's a single level home. There's a lot of things going for it. So I would say it's similar in this market, is that, yeah, you need to look up comparables. You need to get an idea of what properties in that neighborhood are selling for. And I wouldn't even say neighborhood, right? I mean, at this point, because there's so few rental properties, like for example, I'm in Huntington Beach, Southern California here. I'm not just looking at a neighborhood with regards to comparables on a rental. I'm looking at the entire city. What's available out there? What are my options? What's my competition? And I just did this because I just leased a client's property. A client found me. Actually, from here, we purchased a property he wanted to buy for an investment. He plans on moving into it in a couple of years. And we ended up leasing it right afterward. And we actually got quite a bit more for the property than I thought we should, but it's because there's not a lot of options to choose from. It's a cute property. It's turnkey. It's in a great neighborhood close to the beach. We pushed the price a little bit and there were no issues with that. In fact, we had multiple people willing to pay that price. And so I think you need to figure out, okay, what's unique about the property? What are the selling features of that property? Is it a single level, right? And in my market, single levels fetch a little bit of a premium because you've got baby boomers downsizing, selling property that was 2-story. They need something with no stairs. That's it. Traditionally, those properties will lease or sell quicker in some markets because of that. It has good square footage. I mean, there was a lot of things going for it. So I wouldn't say there's a clear-cut answer on how to do this. But again, look at what other properties in the neighborhood have a lease for. How long ago did they lease for that? Because if you find one that's similar to your property and it leased, for example, for $2,000 a month, but that was a year ago, that's not really comparable in this environment if there's no other rentals available. So you can push that price. But what I would tell you is you're going to know fairly quickly in this market if you're priced too high and or too low. So if you come on the market and you get 50 inquiries day one, chances are you're priced too low. If you come out on day one and you get nothing, day 3, 4, 5, you get nothing, you're probably priced too high. The market's going to dictate really quick where you should be. And I never use the services out there. I mean, I just, from seeing rentals and comparing property and that sort of thing, you can get a pretty good idea. So if you have an agent, maybe even if the agent's not helping you list the property for lease, if you're doing it for yourself, chances are you mentioned buying another property. You've got an agent there. I would think that agent should be able to help you, at least on the lease side, tell you, hey, this is where you should be, even if they're not helping you. I mean, I would do that all day long for a client. to give them an idea where the price should be. So rely on the agent and all that good stuff. So I know I just took that down a rabbit hole, but hopefully that's helpful for you.
So I would just, the last thing, Jeb, I would throw in
Yep.
there, and you tell me what your thoughts are on this. For me, as a property owner, not as a property manager, but when it's a property that I own, I don't want to have top of market rent. To me, when you're trying to get the absolute last dollar, which you can in a market like this, you're more likely to get someone who feels a little bit entitled to maybe not treat your property as well, or to reach out to you anytime minor things go wrong. If you give someone a competitive, fair rent, they'll treat you well. The guy we have in my dad's condo right now is awesome. Rent is in my Zelle the first of the month. He reaches out by email if he needs anything. I email him when there's updates in the complex. And it's largely because we probably could have got another $50 or $100 a month for the place, but he feels comfortable with what he's paying and he's getting a fair value. So just think about that when you're trying to get absolute top dollar in this market. Jeb, I don't know if you saw this, but I've got one here that's a good question for you. It would be self-serving for me to answer this, but Roger Pena says, does the bank lending the loan matter because I'm qualified, but I can't seem to get a contract going?
Yeah. So there's two things going on here. Typically, unless you're dealing directly with a bank, for example, Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, one of those guys, that's not who's doing your loan in most cases, right? So if Josh were your lender, if that's who you're saying is the bank, if you're saying Josh is the bank, then the Josh isn't really the bank. He's just the in between. He's facilitating the loan with the actual bank. He's the broker. He's brokering that loan. So it does matter in the case that, a lot of times, for example, if I'm a listing agent and somebody comes in and they've got a pre-approval from a local mortgage broker or a mortgage broker that I can call, have a quick conversation with, and get the information I need, and or they come in with a bank, like the bigger banks, for example, say the Chases of the world, those guys. That's, typically in my experience, the bigger guys out there don't move as quickly. It takes longer to get answers. You don't get the communication that you would with the broker level. And so, and timeframes, right? Shortening contingencies, shortening closing timeframes is very difficult to do with those banks because, right, there's a lot of hoops. They're publicly traded. There's a lot going on there for them to facilitate, and the person that you're dealing with to start might not be the person you're dealing with at the end of the day. So there's just a lot of moving parts there. And so, as a listing agent, I want, to be able to contact somebody. I want things to move quickly and get things done for my client. And so I would say, yeah, in some cases it might hurt you. If you're stuck on using one of these bigger banks. Now, if it's, a mortgage broker or whatever, and the communication's good and they're able to have conversations with the other side and all of that, there really shouldn't be a problem. I mean, at the end of the day, it really shouldn't come down to who you're using for a bank. It should not. But in some cases it may, if you're up against another offer and that other offer is similar, but they're using somebody that can do things quicker. In that case, you might be, having a difficult time. So there's some questions that I would ask you, to get answers for, to figure out if I think the bank thing is an issue. So it could go either way is what I would say.
And what I would say is, just in general, there are specific instances where the big banks are really competitive on rates, but for the most part, they're also not the fastest or the most customer service oriented. But that's a little bit of a generalization there. There's exceptions to that. The ones you want to avoid when you're trying to buy a home are the big box lenders. If they have commercials on TV, a realtor is not going to trust that a kid in the call center that's answering phone calls is going to effectively and efficiently close the deal on time. Remember that your realtor's reputation is at stake with their seller if anything goes sideways. So they are depending on your choice to make them look good, and they're going to call and vet and follow through on that. Now, if they've had a bad experience with a big box lender and that's who your pre-approval is from, and they can't get the person on the phone and they can't do a cross qualification, they're not going to like that.
No, absolutely. S cases, Jason Walters catching me. Great info from both of you. Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, Jason's got a good channel. It focuses primarily on what's happening in the housing market. No, I have no problem if he's out there, beating me, if you will. he's not jumping on the doom and gloom train. Just straightforward information. So that's what I good. Our channels are a little bit different, right? I try to vary my information. I'm not just talking about the housing market. I'm trying to update you on loan programs, on interest rates, on everything, right? I'm trying to educate you on becoming a buyer versus just giving you housing market updates. So there's a difference in the channels, but both good content. So if you're not following him, you can go do that. Claudia gives us $20. Claudia, thank you. That was very nice of you. We appreciate you being here and the support. So that's awesome. Josh, let's see here. Angel has a question. Closing on a house this week on a standard FHA. The appraisal came in higher than what I bought. So I got some equity. I want to pull it out, man. When can I get that money? Show me the money.
So on any cash out loan, FHA, any cash out loan other than VA will let you go to 100% of the value of your home. FHA is 80%, Fannie, Freddie 80%. So with a 3.5% down, unless it went up 20 something percent where you have more than 20% equity in the property, you're not going to be able to pull that. So it does put you one step closer to having 20% equity and being able to do a refinance and get rid of the FHA mortgage insurance. But in terms of pulling that cash out, if it went up 5 or 10% while you're in escrow under contract, it's not going to do a lot for you being able to access that cash unless you were to look at a second mortgage, which I would highly advise against while you're in an FHA loan until you can get rid of that mortgage insurance.
Well, let's address this, Josh, because you just bought the house. It's gone up in value. Be thankful. Don't start trying to pull money out of your property, right? It's not what's the word I'm looking for here? It is an investment to some extent at some point.
But it's not a piggy bank.
It is not a piggy bank. That's the word I was looking for. Let the equity grow. That's how you build wealth, right? Leave it in the property. It's a forced savings account. Every month you make that payment. You're paying down the principal on that loan. At some point in the future, hopefully you've got even more equity in that property. You can transfer it to a bigger property, continue to grow it. Maybe you can keep a lot of things there. But that's, again, I'm not singling out, but that's a big misconception with the whole housing thing is that, hey, I'm going to, buy these properties are going to go up in value and I'm going to pull that money out and whatever. Don't do that. That's, again, a recipe for disaster, especially if there is a correction in the housing market at all. All right. Enough of that. Can you buy new construction today, lock the current interest rate, or will it be based on the market rate upon underwriting when moving in the home?
Well, let's throw this one up here too. They're very similar questions. John says, when do most of your new construction clients lock in their rate? Just curious, at some point, too long costs too much an interest rate, right? And that is the question or the issue that we're talking about here. On a new construction, you have the property, you're under contract, but under contract for a much longer time frame than your standard 30, 45, even 60-day escrow. So people want certainty. Most people aren't gamblers. They would like to lock their interest rate, but that comes at a cost to the lender and they do pass it along to you. So you can get locks as long as 180 days. Once you get longer than 60 days, they're generally going to require an upfront cost. So that cost will be credited to you at closing, but by paying it up front, if the deal goes sideways and doesn't close, you go to another lender. The lender at least got paid for hedging their interest rate risk going forward. So the answer is, for the most part, unless we're in a rapidly increasing interest rate environment, wait till you get inside of 60 days, analyze the market, look at the technical trends, and say, do we need to lock, or can we get inside of 40 or better yet 45 or better yet 30 days. But we're really just looking at the market trends. Like right now, if I had a client and they were within 60 days and they told me I'm not a gambler, we'd say, here's what today's rate is. Are we comfortable with this? Let's lock it, put it to bed. But for the most part, rates are generally, for the last 40 years, trending down. So in any short time frame, 2, 3, 4, 6 months, they can and have gone up. But for the most part, rates have been trending down, and in a short time frame, they chop back and forth. So at risk of like sounding like we're not answering the question, we look at technical analysis, and I have 2 services of guys that are super geniuses that do this and read the charts for me every day and tell me, are the odds in our favor? The technical analysis, what I like to compare it to is counting cards in blackjack. It doesn't guarantee you're going to win the next hand, but it lets you know when the odds are in your favor. And then based on the client's willingness and ability to gamble, then we can make a decision to let us know when the odds are stacked in our favor.
There we go. Suffering Sucks has 2 different questions here that I want to answer. I own 10 acres, 15 minutes outside of downtown Chico, zone Timber Mountain, which is a conservation type zoning. With these new laws, can it be subdivided? A few years ago, it was prohibited. So I believe the SB 9 prohibits any environmental type subdividing. So I think that's probably going to fall underneath that. So I don't think you'll be able to subdivide it because of that. I could be wrong. A lot of all this information is very, very new with SB 9. But just reading the language of the bill, I don't think you're going to be able to do it, but you might check with the city just to see. But you also ask a question up here about buying 5 acres in Grass Valley within 15 minutes from a town and building a house. So building a house and buying a house, 2 different things entirely, right? Especially in the environment that we're in at the moment. Typically, if you lived in a rural area, you could maybe go buy a piece of land and build a house cheaper than you could buy existing construction. But because of where prices have gone with regards to construction cost, material cost, all of that, even land value, it's probably going to cost you more money to build a house in this market than it would be to buy existing construction. Now, hard to say. I don't know the Grass Valley area at all. So it's really hard to give you information on that. Josh, do you want to jump in on anything here?
No, not really. It looks like Suffering Sucks is focused on acreage, having 10 acres outside of Chico, and then
Nothing
looking at
wrong with
5
that.
acres in Grass Valley. Again, knowing nothing about the geography of the area, the population of California continues to grow. So as it does, land will be needed. The conservation zoning can be an issue on the other, but those were my only real thoughts there.
Okay, so here's a question I think is interesting. Just closed a house in Anaheim, has a lot that's 8,000 feet. I want to hear your thought about subdivide or build an ADU. Sounds like a good possibility. Now, Josh, I just read an article yesterday or today. There's a lender out there that you know fairly well that is now allowing homeowners to finance the cost of their ADU into the refinance. So if you go out and you build a $100,000 ADU on your backyard and you have a first mortgage of whatever, 400,000, they're allowing you to take that 400,000. The way I read this, you can correct me if I'm wrong, 400,000 plus the cost that you built on that ADU, 500,000, and you can refinance both and maybe even pull that cash back out of that property or, put them into one loan and lower the interest rate. So that's going to promote, I think, building on some of these lots, if that's the case. Are you aware of that product? Am I?
No, and here's the thing. The reason why I'll step forward with a little bit of an answer to that without knowing what it is, I can always tell you that anytime a lender makes an announcement that they're doing something different than anyone else is, it's not truly unique from the standpoint that they're all selling to Fannie and Freddie. FHA
Right.
and VA are unique products. Everyone
It's
is
Finance
selling
of
these.
America, by the way.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I will say this: Finance of America does have a number of different investors that truly are portfolio products. They're selling them to that investor, so FAM's not actually doing it, but they've come out with some interesting stuff. And their owner, one of their owners, Bill Dallas, was an innovator 20 years ago when you could innovate in our industry. And some people will say innovation for the good, some people say innovation for the bad, but that's his focus. He wants to get away from the dependence on Fannie Freddie loans to products like this that are unique. So let's dig into it and come back and answer that question in more depth of how they're doing it, because it does make sense. Most lenders have not updated and adapted. You see every week we get 5 to 10 questions about ADUs or building an additional property on, so it comes up every week. And Fannie Freddie guidelines they're talking about expanding them, but they're not super expansive. They're restrictive relative to what they can and should be. So a product like that is needed basically to get ahead of what the agencies are not doing. Some of this stuff, like, I feel bad. Most times you guys ask questions and I have an answer and a well thought out response because it's something we've gone through. I really need to dig in more on the ADU stuff and how we're going to finance it and what's going on, because it's a big topic of what people want to do. Now, I think it's sort of like the same questions on, hey, I want to build a house. What does that look like? And then most people decide to just go the normal route. The ADU sounds great in terms of getting a property and then being able to generate some more money from it. But if you're seeing the cost to build on a lot of these ADUs, it doesn't really bring it a lot more affordable than just a regular single family. But definitely plan on digging into it and being able to answer these questions in a little more detail.
No, and what I would say to that is I mean, to follow up on the to answer the question, I mean, if you have an 8,000 square foot lot, building an ADU in the back doesn't affect your yard. You're okay with having another lot. I mean, maybe you plan on renting it out. Maybe it's a mother-in-law quarters, whatever. It's a really good opportunity to bring in additional income. I mean, it's good. You're going to generate more income per month than it's going to cost you to build that property. You should anyway in most markets. So I would say, find out what properties in your neighborhood are renting for. Like a small dwelling like that. Maybe if somebody has one, try to find out what they're getting in rent. I mean, some of these things are over $1,000 a month they're bringing in income, and to build one, it's not going to cost you $1,000 per month on that loan unless you get a really crappy loan. But to something to consider for sure. And I think you're going to see more of it. So we'll try to dig into that program that I mentioned and maybe come back next week and be able to give you a little bit of insight on it. So coming close to 2 hours, which is usually our cutoff, people. So, we're going to get to a couple of more questions here. If you're still watching, you haven't already, hit the thumbs up, give us some support. If you would, that would be nice of you. And Josh has got a sign behind him. It says, work hard and be nice to people. See, being nice to us. We're working hard. Now you be nice to us, people, is what he meant. That's what it should say. Right? No?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
You should say Jeb's working hard. Be nice to him is what it should say.
My wife doesn't really think I'm working very hard right now, I bet. She's like, he's on the computer just talking to people. Let's see. What are you see anything here? Okay, so here's one from Ricardo. Can I get a HELOC loan on my primary home and a vacation house that's paid off? That are the percentage of money that I can borrow.
I think he's meant what's the percentage?
Oh, what are the percentage I can borrow? So home equity line in this market, good idea. Buy that. Answer the question, I guess, first. Can you get a HELOC on a primary and a vacation if they're paid off?
Yes and yes. And
would that be the best option in this market?
I always like to do a side-by-side for the client and say, hey, even though you have a spectacular rate that may be better from 6 months ago or 9 months ago than what we can get today, let's look at what the second mortgage and or HELOC and or second mortgage and your current first look like relative to a new first. A lot of times the cash out can just be more advantageous in the sense that if we borrow using a home equity line of credit, it's always going to be the variable rate. The margins are higher than they were 20 years ago. Lenders got crushed in the downturn with high loan to value second mortgage HELOCs. So we have much higher margins than what we used to have on them. So want to compare all of your options and what percentage can you go to? I have a lender that will go to 97%. I wouldn't advise it. Once you get above 90%, you start paying a premium, a pretty hefty premium on interest rate. And with this vacation home not being a primary residence, you'll pay a premium on that also. So since it's paid off, maybe you'd be looking at a lower loan to value and can still get a good interest rate on that. But yeah, you can get home equity lines of credit on both of them. You can get a fixed rate second mortgage on both of them. The differences or the benefits would be the fixed second is going to be a higher rate, but a fixed rate and a repayment period. The home equity line of credit is variable and you can borrow against it as you need to and pay it down, borrow back, pay down, borrow back during the draw period, which is generally 10 years before you hit the repayment period.
There you go. Great answer. So Josh, we're pushing on 2 hours here, my friend. Parting words, thoughts. What do you want to get off your chest? What's bothering you right now?
Well, it's not bothering me, and I don't know whether I'm happy or unhappy. I guess I'm ambivalent towards it. But the Dodgers did come back and tie the Cardinals. It's 1-1 in the bottom of the fourth. So I know that many of you were foregoing the Dodger game for the excitement that is Jeb and Josh talking about the housing market. But for those of you, I wanted to make sure you had that update. I guess being from the Southland, we should be rooting for the Dodgers, but I'm just not much of a Dodgers fan.
I get it. See, now some people were waiting to start the game, Josh. Some people had it recorded.
And I just screwed it up for them.
And you just completely, entirely ruined it for them. They
I
thought
apologize.
These guys are not going to mention sports on here. I'm safe. I don't have to worry about it. Boom.
I ruined their safe space.
Through.
There is nothing worse than someone ruining you. So this is not an LA Dodgers hat. This is an LA Clippers hat. So during Clippers season, I record the games because I'm usually stuck here late. And nothing will infuriate me more than one of my buddies texting me a tidbit about the game. Or if I have some new service on my phone that doesn't know that I don't want spoilers and it texts me some sort of update, makes me mad.
And you just did it. That's like me getting my car washed, going down the freeway, and the car in front of me turns on their windshield wipers, and it just sprays my entire car. It makes me madder than hell when that happens. And then I go down the freeway, and my windshield's dirty, and I don't even think about it. And I turn on the windshield wipers, and I'm like, oh crap! I just did what that car, what I hate. So anyway, completely unrelated, but just thought I'd throw it out there. We're going to do one more question here while we're doing this. Can you get your taxes lowered immediately after closing on a home because of the inflated prices? Chances are no. Last time we went through this, 2006, 2008, a lot of people, at that time prices had dropped, right? People purchased at a higher level, property taxes went down. You could here in Huntington Beach get your property taxes lowered, or in Orange County, but it was a process. It was like an appeals process. You had to send in a letter. You had to send in comparables that went with that. And there was no guarantee that they were actually going to lower them. So if you were to see home prices go down, it would take quite some time for that to adjust and you to see any real reflection or them even be willing to work with you. So
the funny thing, Jeb, is everyone again in the other 49 states are going, what in the hell are these people talking about? In California, we have limits on what they can go up. So the part that throws me off about Gabrielle's question is saying immediately after closing on a home. In California, what happens is if it's a market sale, meaning the property was put in the MLS and put on the open market, your home's going to be assessed for whatever the sale price was because the market just determined what the value of the home is. So immediately after closing, they're certainly not going to lower that assessed value because it was just determined by the market. And again, I just have to take a objection to, because of the inflated prices. Prices are inflated from where they were. That doesn't mean that they're going to go down anytime in the near future. So just be careful and check your biases when you're going through and asking yourself questions or hoping or planning for what you're going to do going forward. Almost every time when we get a comment like that, or someone says something in the comment section about home prices are way too high, home prices are inflated, I'm waiting for the crash, it's more a reflection of the fact that home prices have passed them by in terms of them no longer being able to qualify for something that they would like to live in, or just a hope that prices will come down to a level that they can afford. So keep tuning in. We will keep running the numbers and we will bring you accurate figures. I was telling Jeb just the other day in 2005, a business partner of mine and I wrote a special report explaining to everyone why in the next 5 years that home values were likely to drop 20%. And we were horrifically wrong. They dropped 50 to 100% in most of the areas that we were talking about. So the numbers never lie. We will go where the numbers take us. Right now, the numbers tell us that home values are going to continue going up.
All right. Well said, Josh. I think that's the way to end it right there. If you guys found any value today, hit the thumbs up. We appreciate you being here. We will be back next week at 5. Once again, thank you, my friends. Adios.